Good morning and welcome to Saturday Morning Coffee Break, where this morning I will be discussing the hidden cost of security friction, why inconvenient security is insecure security. So grab your favorite drink, cup of coffee, hot tea, and let's talk about security controls you paid for that are actually making you less secure. Here's a scene that plays out in thousands of offices every day. An employee needs access to a file to meet a critical deadline. The secure approve process requires three approvals in up to 48 hours. The insecure workaround, just upload it to their personal Dropbox and access it from home. Takes 30 seconds or less. Why do you think they chose this approach? If you said, obviously, the secure process, because security is important. Congratulations on your optimism. You're also completely wrong about how humans actually work. This is the security friction paradox. The harder you make it for people to do their jobs securely, the more creative they become at bypassing your security entirely. And those workarounds, they're almost always more dangerous than the original risk you were trying to mitigate. The friction tax that no one talks about. Security friction isn't just annoying, it's expensive in the ways that we never show up on a budget report. Let's paint the picture this Saturday morning. The first is a productivity cost. Your developers need to spin up a test environment. Your security policy requires a formal request, security review, and an approval process. The timeline is 1 week. Meanwhile, they're blocked, missing deadlines, and the project is hemorrhaging money. So they do what any rational person would do. They use their personal AWS account and expense it later. Congratulations! You just moved your corporate intellectual property into an unsecure personal cloud account. The security control didn't prevent the risk, it just made the risk invisible, thus leading to shadow IT explosion. Every security barrier you erect spawns 10 workarounds. Research shows that for every approved enterprise application, there are typically 10 to 15 unapproved alternatives in use. Each one represents employees saying the approved way is too painful, so I'll find another path. These shadow solutions don't just bypass your security controls, they exist in your blind spot, completely outside your security monitoring, incident response plans, and disaster recovery procedures. Thus, the innovation penalty. When security friction is high, people stop experimenting. They stop trying new approaches. They stick to the known approved paths, even when better options exist. Over time, this calculates your organization and makes you less competitive. Thus, the psychological of the path of least resistance. Let's get real about human nature for a moment. When you design security controls, you're competing against every other demand on your employees' time and their attention. The sales rep trying to close a deal before end of quarter, they're thinking about their commission check, not your data loss prevention policy. The engineer deploying a critical fix at 2 a.m., they're focused on getting the system back online, not whether they're following the proper change management procedure. Now let's pick on our executives for a moment. The executives rushing between meetings. They're absolutely going to use the same password for everything if you make them change it every 30 days while forcing increasingly complex requirements. This is not a character flaw, it's basic human psychology. When faced with friction, we as humans instinctively seek the path of least resistance. It's not lazy, it's how our brains are wired to conserve cognitive energy for the truly important decisions. The question isn't whether people will take shortcuts. The question is, are your security controls designed so that the easiest path is also the secure path? Next is the myth of the determined user. Here's a conversation many of us have probably had a dozen times. Security team, we need to implement this control. The business, but that will make this common task really difficult. Security team, Security is important. People will just have to deal with it. This approach assumes that inconvenience plus importance equals compliance. Oops, it doesn't. It equates to workarounds. I call this the determined user fallacy. The belief that if something is important enough, people will overcome any amount of friction to do it the right way. But that's not how habits form. It's not how security culture develops. So, if your security control requires perfect compliance to be effective, the perfect compliance requires sustained willpower. You've built a security control that will fail. Not might fail, will fail. It's just a question of when. Thus, let's talk about the friction spectrum. Not all security friction is created equal. Understanding whether friction helps versus hurts is critical to building security that actually works. So, our first one is production friction, the good stuff, making users pause before sending sensitive data externally, requiring a second factor for high risk transactions, prompting for justification when accessing sensitive customer records, creating speed bumps for irreversible actions like deleting production databases. This friction serves a purpose. It creates a moment of conscious decision making at a critical junction. It's security equivalent of, are you sure? When you're about to delete something important. Next is the wasteful friction, the problem. This is when we require password changes every 30 days, a multi step approval process for routine tasks, security tools that break constantly, requiring our IT support, and controls that apply equal to low risk and high risk scenarios, systems that lock out users for trivial reasons. This friction doesn't add meaningful security, it just adds frustration. And frustrated users become creative problem solvers in the wrong way. So, some real world friction failures. Let me share some war stories from the trenches. Our first one is the password complexity, we'll just say catastrophe. A financial services firm implemented aggressive password requirements, 16 characters, upper, lower, number, special characters. You need to change it every 45 days. You can't reuse the last 24 passwords. Sounds secure, right? Well, within 3 months, the IT help desk was flooded with password reset requests. Productivity tanked. And here's the kicker, they found post it notes with passwords under keyboards everywhere. Employees weren't writing down random passwords, they had created a system, company name, and the year. And then for February, it was company name, year, and then the month, and so on and so on. The friction didn't create security, it created a predictable pattern that made passwords easier and easier to guess. Our next one is the VPN bottleneck. A tech company required all remote employees to route through their VPN. During COVID, this created such severe performance issues that developers started working around it. Some would use personal equipment. Others disabled the VPN whenever they needed actual bandwidth. The security team actually knew this would happen, but they had no idea of the scale until they did an audit. Turns out VPN usage during work hours was only 40% of the expected levels. The other 60% operating completely outside of their security perimeter. We've talked about it briefly, the approval process nightmare. A healthcare organization required security approval for new software. Sounds right. The process took an average of 6 weeks. Ooh, that's not good. Except employees needed tools to do their jobs, so they just went and used web based versions without asking. The approved secure desktop software sat unused while everyone accessed the same functionality through an unapproved, unmonitored web application. The security team had perfect control over the software that nobody actually used. The hidden cost you're already paying. Security friction taxes your organization in ways that are hard to measure, but are very real. Our first one is time theft. Every extra minute spent navigating security friction is time not spent on productivity. Multiply those minutes across your workforce, and suddenly you're talking about thousands of lost hours annually. Talent drain. Your top performers don't tolerate unnecessary friction well. When your security controls need and make your best people less effective, they leave for companies where they can actually work efficiently. Now, from a security point of view, incident response delays. We don't want that. When something goes wrong, friction in your security tools slows down response times. If accessing critical logs requires three approvals, takes 30 minutes, attackers have an extra 30 minutes to do damage, exfiltration, etc. Are compliance gaps. Ironically, excessive friction often creates the very compliance gaps it's meant to prevent. When the compliant path is too painful, people find non compliant shortcuts that auditors never discover until it's too late. Designing low friction security is important. So, how do you build security that's both effective and usable? Here's a framework. First, start with default to allow, selectively restrict. Instead of blocking everything and require approvals to allow specific things, flip the model. Allow most things by default, but add intelligent monitoring and controls around truly sensitive activities. Automate, automate the boring and repetitive stuff. Every manual security process is friction waiting to create a workaround. If a security check can be automated, automate it. Let machines handle the repetitive verification, while humans focus on genuinely suspicious activity. Make your security invisible. Yes, invisible. The best security controls are the ones users don't even notice. Single sign on, automatic encryption, zero trust networks that authenticate in the background. These protect without being annoying. Use risk proportional controls. Accessing public marketing materials shouldn't require the same security rigor as accessing your customers' financial data. Calibrate your friction to the actual security risk. Next, user-centered design. Before implementing any security control, ask, would I personally want to use this every day? If the answer is no, redesign it until the answer becomes yes. A friction audit. So it's Saturday morning. Let's try this exercise. Map out a common user journey within inside of your organization. Pick something routine, such as accessing a file, sharing a document, deploying code, whatever it is. Now walk through every security checkpoint they may encounter. How many login prompts? How many approval steps? How many different tools or systems? How much time does this add to the task at hand? What would you do if you were in a hurry? Be honest with that last question, because whatever shortcut you've taken, your users have already taken it. The convenient security balance. So here's what I've learned after years of watching security programs succeed and fail. Convenience isn't the enemy of security. Inconvenience masquerading as security is the problem. The organizations with the best security aren't the ones with the most controls or the strictest policies. They're the ones who are doing the right thing is also the easy thing, where security tools work better than insecure alternatives, where security enhances their productivity rather than hinder it. So let's think differently. What if your password manager was easier to use than remembering passwords? What if your approved file share was faster than email and attachments? What if your VPN actually improved connection speeds through better routing? What if security tools gave people superpowers instead of slowing them down? This isn't fantasy. This is what good security design looks like. Your weekend challenge is to pick one security control that's inside of your organization that generates the most complaints. So this week, instead of defending it or explaining why it's necessary, ask this question. How could we achieve the same security outcome with 50% less friction? You might be surprised by what you discover. Often the friction isn't actually providing security, it's just providing the illusion of a control. So here's your coffee break action items. Identify your three highest friction security controls. Talk to your actual users about how they really interact with these controls. Next, look for patterns in your security tools that bypass behavior. Design one low friction alternative to your most frustrating control. Measure compliance rates. Low compliance often signals excessive friction. Thus, remember security controls that people bypassed aren't controls at all. They're a theater. And in cybersecurity, theater doesn't just waste money, it creates a false confidence while leaving real vulnerabilities wide open. So your goal isn't to eliminate all friction, it's to ensure that every bit of friction you introduce serves a genuine security purpose and is designed with human nature in mind, not in spite of it. So let's wrap up with low friction security design checklist. The first one in the list is security controls are proportional to your risk levels. Routine tasks require known or minimal security overhead. Secure options are as convenient as your insecure alternatives. Compliance is measured and friction is adjusted based on the results. Users can accomplish their jobs without creative workarounds. Security tools should enhance rather than hinder your company's productivity. Automation handles repetitive security checks. Thank you for tuning in. This is one of my longer sessions, but I felt like it was important to cover this with you. So take another sip of that cup of coffee and enjoy your weekend. So until next time, stay safe and stay secure, everyone.